architectural character, and a sense of place that cannot be recreated once it is lost. By earning a place on the National Register of Historic Places, the West Side is now formally recognized as a district of national significance, worthy of preservation and respect. Historic designation is not about freezing time. It is about honoring our past while thoughtfully moving forward. It encourages reinvestment, education, and pride, while ensuring that the unique character of this neighborhood continues to contribute to Laramie's identity and sense of community. Today, as we unveil this plaque, we are not just marking a location, we are acknowledging a shared commitment to preservation, to storytelling, and to the belief that our history matters. This plaque will serve as a visible reminder that the West Side is an integral part of Laramie's heritage and a legacy worth protecting. Thank you all for being here to celebrate this important achievement. And now I would like to introduce Gwendolyn Christie, who is our board secretary. She is the one that has been instrumental in making this project a success. She wrote the grant application, she wrote the request for proposals, she made flyers and distributed them in your neighborhood multiple times for our town hall meetings for this project. She has done walking tours to elaborate on how and why this neighborhood is so important to Laramie and Albany County as a whole. She was the project lead and organized and trained volunteers to assist with the documentation required for this nomination. She is truly an asset to our board and our community. So Gwendolyn, come on up.
Thanks, Karen. My name is Gwendolyn Christie. As Karen said, I'm the secretary for the Historic Preservation Board, and I've served on this board for 7 years. I'm also a homeowner in the West Side neighborhood. I live just across the street from the historic Lincoln Community Center that we're in right now. And as Karen said, I was the project lead for the Albany County Preservation Board for this West Side District project. I would like to recognize and thank the historic preservation consultants who actually prepared the paperwork for the nomination. It's an organization called Post Oak Preservation, and that is who I contracted with when I got the grant to do this project. They unfortunately do not live in town and could not be present tonight, but they put an extraordinary amount of work into collecting all the information from our field work, all of the historic documentation associated with the neighborhood, and actually preparing the nomination itself and getting it through the National Register Review Board. They did a wonderful job, and it was a blessing to be able to work with such competent people. I also want to thank our city councilors and our county commissioners for supporting the project, not only by showing up to our town halls and engaging with us, but by providing matching funds for the grant we got. I'd like to point out a few things today before we get into the meat of it with our historians. Firstly, I want to point out that the West Side Historic District is the second out of over 100,000 listings in the United States that has been translated into Spanish. It's a really big deal to make sure preservation-related work is accessible to everyone, and particularly the communities who built the place. And so we're the second listing that has ever done that in the history of the country, and that's pretty exciting. It really puts us ahead of the curve. I'd also like to point out that in Wyoming and in Laramie, a National Register listing is primarily an honorific designation. It's used as a tool to draw attention to places worthy of preservation around our country. The designation of our neighborhood as a National Register Historic District does not mean that the government can seize your property. It does not stop a private property owner from demolishing or modifying their property. And it does not allow the public to access your private property. So if anyone has questions or concerns about what the designation might mean for their property, I'm happy to answer those after our presentations. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who has attended our public and community meetings over the last several years. We've been working on this for at least 5 years. It's been a huge community effort. Lots of volunteers were involved, many of which live in this neighborhood. And without their support, this never would have happened. I'd also like to draw attention to what we're asking folks in the room to do tonight. So in the back, we have our bronze plaque from the National Park Service, but we just have a single plaque, right, for an entire neighborhood that consists of over 700 buildings. And so we want to ask the community where we should put that plaque. Do we need to raise money for additional plaques or different kinds of signage in the neighborhood? So I have maps that show the boundary of the district. We'd prefer to put the plaque within the district, not outside of the district. And it's small, and so we want to capture, foot traffic probably. So think about those things when you think about a location for the plaque. And I have little stickers. You can put a sticker on the map, and there's also a survey you could take where you can provide comments or select one of the pre-provided options for the location of the plaque. There's also copies of the National Register nomination on the tables back there, and so if you want to look through that and see what goes into a nomination, please take a look at that. I'm happy to provide digital copies of the nomination to everyone here, but we can't provide print copies to everyone. It's gigantic. I would now like to introduce our County Commissioner, Terry Jones, who has a few words she would like to share with the community. Thank you.
This is so great to see everybody out. It shows you're real Larameites when you come out in the wind like this. The Albany County Historic Preservation Board needs to be commended for the work that they do throughout the county. And I just have called this the West Side Project. I don't know if that's really what you guys wanted to call it, but now it's the West Side Historic District, which is wonderful. This was quite an undertaking, and many congratulations to the Historic Preservation Board and all the members that worked so hard, that had the expertise and the vision to put this all together. It's a pleasure for the Albany County Commissioners to work hand in hand with supporting this project. The Historic Preservation Board found the grants. The county grants manager helped with the grants and managed them. The county and the city provided matching funds to get this project underway. And the county really believes that we have a wonderful partnership with the Historic Preservation Board. Personally, I've been so pleased since the Albany County Historic Preservation Board brought this forward. As a youngster, I had grade school friends that lived on this side of the track, so to speak. And every once in a while, I would come over here to something that the Brownies would do when I was a little tiny Girl Scout. And it was always just really cool to come to this building and do things. So when I'd come to visit my friends, that most of them went to Whiting or Washington's, the original Whiting and Washington School. And I would ride my bike and ride over the footbridge, which was always really cool to do. But there was something different about coming here to play with my friends. I had no idea idea what it was just something cool, and I always really liked it. Well, then I grew up and I went to work for Pacific Power, and I was a meter reader, which meant that I went to all of the houses here and would go in the yards. I had no idea that there were so many really cool houses and yards, and some of them you don't see from driving down the street. So when this project came about, I'm going, yes, these people are going to be recognized for the wonderful things that they've done. So I want to thank you all very much for accomplishing this task. And I feel that learning about history and knowing about your community is really the glue that makes it a community. So I want to thank the Historic Preservation Board for all of your work getting this accomplished. And the next thing we have to, and you guys have been working on it a long time, we got to get the church.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we're going to have a series of several influential historians and community members share their remarks about the neighborhood. So we have several community members whose research and knowledge was integral to the development of this listing, and we've given each of them a few moments to share with us. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Jan Berkeldson, a Laramie historian, to come up and share.
Hello, I'm Jan Thurkelson. My maiden name is Bodkin. I grew up here in Laramie. And right now, I'm the president of the Albany County Historical Society. Now, I didn't grow up on the west side, but one of my major memories is my dad was an animal science professor. So, you know, some days he went to work up on campus, and he left the house in a suit and tie, and other days he left the house in a cowboy hat and boots and Levi's because he was going to the lab, which was out at the stock farm, which is where the territorial prison site is now. So we went out to the stock farm with my dad a lot, and of course we drove through the west side on our way out there. I also came over with a few friends over here. I lived for 35 years down in Denver, and I moved back to Laramie finally 4.5 years ago. And temporarily, for a couple of months, I got to live on the west side. I live in the most coolest backyard house. There's so many of those neat backyard houses over here. And I was right behind Janet Krall's house. Janet lives in a house that Spiegelberg's originally built. And I would walk out the back gate, and there was always somebody walking by. They were walking by in the street, not on the sidewalk. You guys know that about people over here, yeah. And they were so friendly. They'd stop and tell me who their son was and what their dog's name was. And I mean, we just had the greatest talks. It was, I think if I hadn't already put an offer on a house, I would have found a house over here. I just loved living over here. So this picture here, I just love it because it shows us our sad, boarded up church that we see now. It shows us what the church looked like when it was thriving and active. And this picture was taken in 1912, and the photographer was B.C. Buffum. And the people sitting up on top of the roof were repairing the roof because lightning had struck. It actually kind of messed up the steeple also, and they had fixed that, and they were fixing the roof. But one of the things you'll notice that's different is there are actually a set of stairs leading up to the church. And that's really different compared to what you see now, which is just a flat walk-in. When I was writing the article, I talked to Scott Morton, who's an engineering professor, and his theory is that over time the ground had built up, partly because of ash and cinder. And I mean, that kind of makes sense to me, except for then I think about other houses over here. It's like, well, they're not all sunk into the ground, so I don't exactly know what we would find out if we, right now, to actually go under the church, we would be trespassing because it's privately owned. But it would be really interesting to see if that set of stairs is still like down under the ground. It would just be so interesting. I wrote an article about this church. It was published in the Boomerang, August 31st, 2024. All of the articles that we published in the Boomerang, we also put up on the Albany County Historical Society website. So you can go up and read all of the historical articles that we've published, including this one. But I want you to know that the cornerstone of this church was laid over 140 years ago on April 26, 1885. That gold ball and cross up on top, which by the way is still there, was mounted on the steeple in May 1885. On July 26, 1885, the church building was dedicated and they began using it. And by the way, while it was being built, after they organized, they actually met in what was then the Lincoln School here, which is the predecessor to this building. The cool thing for my family is, on September 29, 1885, my son, Tyler Thurkelson's great-great-grandparents, Emil Thurkelson, who had come over from Denmark, and Jenny Thobro, who had come over from Norway, were married in that church. In 1891, you see the little parsonage house kind of back behind the church. That parsonage house was completed. So when I was writing this article, I spent a lot of time looking at the old maps, figuring out how to search the abstracts and land records of Albany County for this part of the west side, and also looking through old newspapers and all sorts of other places. I learned a lot of skills, especially that land research. That was really helpful. So when they gathered to start working on documenting the west side, I was able to help a lot of people learn the skills I had learned, and also to help them do some documentation and research themselves about the different buildings. And that was really fun. I want to thank the movers and shakers who made this happen, including the Albany County Historic Preservation Board. And also, it was great working with the Post Oak Preservation Solutions people. They were really fabulous. Congratulations, West Side.
Thank you, Jan. We're going to welcome to the front of the room another eminent Laramie historian, Judy Knight.
I hope that it's possible to turn the lights off so that you all can see the picture that Jan was talking about. I want to piggyback one little factoid about this. Oh, well, maybe it's disappeared. Anyway, if you look closely at the church today, you will see coming out the light fixture above the front door on the south side, there are twigs. They didn't just blow in there today. They have been there for a long time. They are the dormant, is that the right word for it, Dennis? Plant called matrimony vine. It's a nuisance in the west side. It came on the railroad probably, and that's why it flourishes here. And it will take over this building and destroy it from the inside. Matrimony vine is growing under the front door boarded up portion, growing up the wall behind the door, and coming out in daylight in that light fixture. So when you go by it in the summer, you can notice the green leaves. It is not a noxious weed. The reason, it has a berry called ACAI, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's considered a wonderful nutrient, and the Wyoming Extension Service actually did an experiment to see how well it would grow as a crop in Wyoming. The answer was not very well. It produces wonderful twigs. You don't see it in this picture, but ever since the building has been unused, it has taken over a portion of the front. So that's my little contribution to what could happen to this building if you all don't join the powers that be in trying to figure out a way to preserve this building, which is owned by a congregation in Omaha and has been defunct for at least 15 years here in Laramie. I'd also like to add to what Terry Jones had to say about the unique feeling of coming over to the west side. It was Gina Chavez who told me that one of the unique features of the west side that she knew from growing up here is that children play in the street. There are not that many cars, and so drivers are careful to watch out for the kids, and it feels different because the sidewalks are pretty useless. They tend to use the street as a playground. And it reflects a kind of culture here that is unique to this neighborhood. And I'm so glad that it has been recognized as worth preserving and continuing in a cultural heritage that we all applaud for this neighborhood. So those of you who live here now and are part of that preservation effort going forward, I think you're doing wonderful things. I'm happy to be a writer who has written a little of the stories about it, also posted on the website of the Albany County Historical Society. So, thank you all, and especially Gwendolyn and the Preservation Board.
Thank you, Judy. I'd like to welcome to the front another important historian. She is a historian of Albany County branches and of the West Side itself, and she has many personal ties to the neighborhood. Let's welcome Dixie May to the stage.
I hope you'll turn the lights back on because I am just thrilled to death that this part of Laramie has been put on the National Historic Register. My family came over here in the 1870s and 1880s, and 15 of my family members actually lived over here on the west side. My great-grandmother lived across the street from here, and when I was 4 years old, my grandparents brought me to town. We lived on a ranch. One of the things I'd like to mention is a lot of the people that lived on the west side also were ranchers. And my family was one of them. Anyhow, my grandparents brought me to town. They took me to my great-grandmother's house.
they took me in the house, and this is the only time I remember her. I was 4. And I think the reason I remember it so well is she gave me a pair of wooden shoes, small wooden shoes that her family had brought over from Germany when they moved to the United States. And I still have those little wooden shoes. And every time I look at them, I think about going in that house across the street. During my many years of doing research of the West Side and ranch histories, there were many early families who settled here in the 1860s, 70s, and so on. The first residents over here were homesteaders. There was 4 homesteads, and I hate to admit it, but one of the homesteads I just discovered recently. I didn't pay attention to the first one. It was over there on that property where there is nothing now, a big field where there has been lumber yards and all kinds of different businesses. That was actually homesteaded by a woman in 1920. That's when she got her title. Although many times when a family homesteaded, it might be 10 years before they got their title. So if it said 1920, she might have been living there in 1910. Who knows? But the other homesteaders was the Fee, Carroll, and Hodgman families. The Fee family, there's still 5 or 6 homes here on the west side that the Fee family lived in. There's a table over here on the wall, and their original homestead picture is there. That house is still standing at the corner of Bradley and Railroad. And then the Carroll house is off of Kearney. It's behind the Optimus Park. Those 2 homes, well, the Fee home, according to newspaper articles, was built in 1872. The Carroll home could have been built before that because Michael Carroll was here in the 1860s. Now, the Fees didn't get here till about 1870. And the Hodgman family, the Carrolls and the Fees came from Ireland. The Hodgman family came from New York, although originally they were from Germany. And originally, the West Side was settled by many, many nationalities. But there was quite a few people over here that were from Germany. The Spiegelberg family and my family came from the same town in Germany. And when they first came here, they all settled over here. I just love that history. I actually got to interview Frank Spiegelberg. And it turns out that his family and my family attended the same church in Germany. So he had all his records from the church over there, baptismal and confirmation records. And I'm lucky I have all those too. And so I was really surprised to find that they belonged to the same church in Germany. And they helped establish, sad to say, not the Scandinavian German church, but Scandinavian Lutheran church. But my family, the Spiegelbergs, established the German Lutheran church, which is over by the library, and across the street from the library in that area. Anyhow, I've interviewed and researched many, many families over the years. Frank Spiegelberg was one of them. Another one was Henrietta George McCormick. Her family owned 2 houses right across the street from here. She was my cousin, and her 5 brothers and sisters all went to school here. And I believe their pictures probably here somewhere in the family. And the other person that I wanted to mention was Cheryl Metzler Green. Her family has been here, has lived on this side of town, on the west side, since the late 1800s. So I believe that Cheryl is probably the one person that has lived, her family's lived here the longest, and they still live here. The house she lives in was built in 1875. It wasn't built by the Metzlers, but her grandfather bought that house. I love the history. I put some of my research over there on that table. And if you'd like to look at it, and if there's something you're interested in, I would be more than happy to share with you. I love sharing the history of the West Side and even the ranches because I've worked with both. All of my histories are going into the American Heritage Center. And I have to thank Jan Thurkelson for that. She came to me one day and she said, Dixie, you have got to get your history into the American Heritage Center. I have 75 boxes, file boxes, this long, this high, full of research. I have 500,000 documents on my computer. My IT man said he's never seen that many. So I've tried to digitize everything. And if anyone is interested in seeing some of my work, I've done a genealogy on almost every family, all of the West Side families that I've researched, and all of the ranch histories, because I wanted to know where they came from. I think it's important to know where the families came from. I've loved every minute of it, and I want to thank Gwendolyn for choosing me to come up tonight and talk. Thank you so much. And he's my cousin.
Thanks so much, Dixie. Without all the work you've spent years compiling, the listing would not be what it is. I'd like to welcome to the stage one more influential West Sider. She is the chair of the Lincoln Community Center Board, the building that we are in right now. She's also on the Albany County Historic Preservation Board. She was integral in the restoration and rehabilitation of this building, and that is our West Side neighbor, Siobhan Kelly.
Well, I feel like it's my job tonight to welcome you all to the Lincoln Community Center. Thank you for being here. I would like to recognize the board of the Lincoln Community Center. If you're a board member, please raise your hand. They're in the back. I would like to recognize those of you who attended school at the Lincoln School. Will you please raise your hands? So I just wanted to say that the Lincoln Community Center was a dream of neighbors of the West Side before I even arrived. And it was the Albany County Historic Preservation Board in 2001, after many years of going through the National Register process and documenting the history of the West Side School and the Lincoln School, that this building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. I'm happy to say tonight that though we have never had our bronze plaque, we have received a grant for the 250th of our country, celebration of our country, and we will be getting our plaque, and we will be celebrating that and unveiling that on the building at our Cinco de Mayo celebration, which will be May 2nd, and we will be featuring West Side history and West Side families and Hispanic culture of the Southeast and antique cars, and we hope you can all join us again on May 2nd. Thank you.
That concludes our programming for the night. We'd like to invite anyone else to the front of the room if they have something to share, or if anyone has any questions. We have the building booked out for several more hours, so don't forget to tell us where you think the plaque should go, and if we should get any other sort of signage and recognition for the neighborhood. We don't know what to do if the community doesn't tell us what they want, so please share your comments with us, and enjoy some snacks, and thanks for coming.